Hello, and welcome to a special edition of the Comic Community News. This is the show that tries to give you important information about what's going on in the comic book world, and tonight we're bringing you a special edition. It's an all-Black Hammer special, so if that sounds like something you want to hear about, or if you've never heard of Black Hammer before, this is for you. Yes, that's right. Our top and only story tonight is Black Hammer, the Dark Horse comic book written by Jeff Lemire, that is now on its 13th trade paperback volume, and more still to come. I'm here to tell you a little bit about what is Black Hammer, what are some of the characters in this comic book, who would enjoy to read it, and the reading order and my reviews for those 13 trade paperback volumes. Black Hammer is an alternative view of superheroes that basically takes all of your favorite elements from golden, silver, and modern age comic books, blends them together, and creates an all-new universe, but based completely on the history of comic books. Creator Jeff Lemire talks a lot about how he wanted to make this his love letter to the history of comic books, and boy does it show up top to bottom here in Black Hammer. Most of the characters, events, and even the format and look of these books comes straight out of the original Golden and Silver Age comic book characters. So who are these characters? Well, the main series is based a little bit on DC's Justice League, and you'll notice a lot of similarities to the original Justice League characters. So we have 7 hero characters, and in the story they're all trapped on a strange farm, and they're unable to escape. The leader of this group, the hero most referenced, is Abraham Slam, based loosely on the Silver Golden Age Atom character, but also a ton of the Golden Age Captain America. Abraham Slam has part boxer, part Nazi defeater, and yet all hero character. And we get to see him sort of aged up as sort of an old Captain America, living on the farm and trying to keep the group together despite really stressful circumstances. We also have Golden Gale, and Gale looks like a young 10 or 11-year-old girl, but in reality, she is the Shazam stand-in and has the ability to turn into this little girl superhero, but when she says the magic word Zafram, she turns back into her normal female form. The problem is the normal female form ages, but her superhero form is always an 11-year-old girl. And on the farm where they're living, she can't switch back and forth. She is stuck as an 11-year-old. Next up, we've got Colonel Weird, who a lot of those Adam Strange Adventures fans will know him as representing some of the same outer space explorer qualities that Adam Strange represents. He also has his sidekick, the robot Talkie Walkie, who is his assistant and sort of speaks in a sort of Jarvis-like manner. He's a really interesting character because he seems to exist outside of time and dimension, and as a result sort of drifts in and out of the story in really unusual ways, but at the same time clearly has a lot more information than some of our other heroes. Next we have Madame Dragonfly, based loosely on some of the Golden Age horror comic books and a character named Madame Xanadu from the Swamp Thing stories. This character has a lot of magical powers and has a magical house, her house of horror, where she draws her energy and power. She also seems to have a lot more information that she's letting on and had maybe a possibly mysteriously evil agenda afoot. Then we have the title character Black Hammer, who is a superhero based maybe loosely on some of that Green Lantern mixed with Thor genre stuff. Has this powerful hammer, and the hammer connects to a whole culture of superheroes connecting the universe, much like the Green Lantern with the ring. The Black Hammer is seemingly missing in the first few trades, and so we're trying to figure out what might have happened to him and why he seems to be somebody that nobody wants to talk about on the farm. I've saved my favorite character for last, and that's Barbalien, or Mark Marks, based loosely on the Martian Manhunter character. Mark Marks is a detective and a police officer by day and a superhero fighting crime at night. What I like about Barbalien is he's also dealing with a huge internal struggle as a homosexual and the issues he had on his home planet, versus what he's dealing with on the farm as well. He is a very interesting character with a lot of depth, a lot more humanity for an alien, and somebody who really is holding a lot of the strands of this team together. All 7 of those characters come together on the farm, and some of them want to leave. Some of them have accepted the fate of being stuck here, and some of them are just outright bitter at this situation. So who exactly would be interested in reading this? I would say, firstly, people like me with a little love for the nostalgia and history of comic books would find a lot to enjoy here, especially Golden Age and Silver Age fans. But I would say people who are wanting to get into indie comics, who've been mainly reading DC and Marvel, this is a wonderful bridge to the indie world because you have that indie sentimentality, that style of let's break all the borders and go in a lot of fun different directions, but also it is steeped in the lore of great superhero comics. And that mixture might be a really great bridge for people trying out independent comics for the very first time. But now let's get into the reading order because this is complicated. John, can you help us? Absolutely, John. Yes, the reading order for Black Hammer can be very tricky. There are 13 trade paperbacks, as I said, and that can create a lot of confusion as to where to start, especially when they are not, and this is a repeat, they are not numbered 1 through 13. There's a 1 through 4 in the main Black Hammer story, and then none of the other 9 volumes have any numbering system at all. And this can lead to a ton of confusion, so much so that Black Hammer on their website even has a reading list for you to go through. On top of all of that, they've even started releasing Black Hammer in what they call library editions that are collected volumes that have several of the trade paperbacks included into one. This really creates a lot of tumultuous, how do I read these books? And I'm here to help you figure out the best way to start reading this great series. I break it down into 4 chunks or 4 sequences. 2 of them I would say are required reading, and the other 2 are sort of tie-ins almost to the main story, and you can decide how and when you read some of those. So I would say part 1 is a 4-volume set, and it includes the original 2 trade paperbacks, which is the starting line for anybody getting into Black Hammer. I would say get volume 1 and 2. Volume 1 is called Secret Origins, and volume 2 is called The Event. Those are 2 of the numbered volumes. So if you find a Black Hammer 1 and a Black Hammer 2, those are the best place to start, and they collect the original issues first published in the Black Hammer storyline. It does have a cliffhanger ending, but I recommend not jumping straight to volume 3 right away. Instead, I've included in my part 1 2 sort of tie-in trade paperbacks that I think are important to the overall story. First up, we have one called Sherlock Frankenstein. This focuses on one of the villains and how maybe they aren't as villainous as we previously thought. I really thought this was important, and later on, he ties into the main story in an interesting way. I also want to recommend my 4th part in this first volume for me is Dr. Andromeda, which is another side superhero character who seems to be unimportant but later kind of ties in. You might also find this labeled under Dr. Star, which is another way in which this is kind of confusing because it was originally published as Dr. Star until a copyright issue came into play, and they've since had to go back and retitle all the new versions of these trade paperbacks so that it says Dr. Andromeda now. Those are the first 4 trade paperbacks I would make sure that you read. Volumes 1 and 2 of Black Hammer, plus Dr. Andromeda and Sherlock Frankenstein. It gives you a really good view of the overall universe and who these characters are. Now, part 2 for me is a collection of tie-ins. These are ones that I feel like you could pick and choose in any order that you wanted to go, but I got 4 tie-in trade paperbacks that are all sort of filling in gaps in the Black Hammer universe, and if you became addicted to this universe as I did, you're gonna want to read all of them. First up, we have Black Hammer 45. This is a fun look at pilots during World War II. It's a throwback to some of those old Flying Aces kind of comics, those military comics. In this case, we're looking at a group of sort of Tuskegee airmen battling against giant robot mech suits from Russia, and ghost Nazi pilots from the Second World War in Germany, and they're all sort of fighting over the turf in and around Central Europe. It's amazing, very exciting stuff. Then we jump to Quantum Age, which is a jump into the future to look at a new team of superheroes that have taken over while our heroes are stuck on the farm. And you get to wonder a little bit about how did characters get to and from the farm? Are they connected? Did anybody ever escape? It's a fun look ahead at Spiral City and where these heroes all fit together. Then we have Streets of Spiral City, which is a collection of tie-ins, individual stories about maybe certain heroes or certain villains and how they connect to one another. I really enjoyed Streets of Spiral, but I can totally understand people wanting to skip all these little details. Lastly, in this part 2 section, I want to recommend Black Hammer Justice League. This is a wonderful tie-in where they take the DC Justice League characters and our Black Hammer characters and they swap places. Our heroes land in the DC universe and they're trying to take over for the Justice League in some ways. The Justice League land on the farm and they're stuck there trying to deal with what is happening to them in this mysterious dimension. This was a very entertaining tie-in, and for those DC fans who would love to see these characters interact, it was a joy. This brings me to my third part in how I would read these books, and the third part is the other vital part. This is Black Hammer Volumes 3 and 4, what they call Age of Doom. Now we deal with that cliffhanger from the end of Volume 2, and we're looking at how do these stories connect and what is going to happen if our characters try to leave the farm. This was the huge event, these 2 volumes, and I think it's just absolutely a rip-roaring fun read. All of that wraps up the main Black Hammer storyline, and it leads you to where Black Hammer is now in the last year and a half. The final part in my reading order, part 4, is the trade paperbacks that are sort of standalone stories connecting the rest of the Black Hammer universe. First, we have Colonel Weird Cosmagog. This is a fun look at Colonel Weird and his story and some of the times in which he's disappeared from the main story. What has he been doing? I connect this a lot to Strange Adventures. It's very entertaining space travel stuff. Lots of good Golden and Silver Age goodness here. So this was a highly entertaining, very fun and funny, wild ride. And lastly, the last 2 volumes are 2 of my all-time favorites. First up, we've got Barbalien Red Planet, a volume that looks at Mark Marks, the Barbalien character who is dealing with being a police officer during the AIDS epidemic and watching the clash between the gay rights activists and the police trying to shut down all their meeting places. This is a powerful look at history and what was going on culturally in big cities in these times. I think they do a great job of balancing the views of the police officers like Mark Marks and the gay rights activists of the time and how they were trying to prove a point about their freedoms. This was a very powerful read, really amazing art, and it hit me emotionally in the gut. Lastly, we have the volume that a lot of my friends told me to read from the beginning. They said it was one of their favorites, and that's Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy. This sort of homage to Batman and the Punisher, this wonderful look at the relationship between Batman and Robin. We have our Batman and Robin here with Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy. We even have a Joker character. This was a very dark and interesting action-packed read that really looks a lot at the DC Batman mythology. There's also some fun connections to the Punisher and does Batman kill or why doesn't Batman kill, because that plays into the story a ton. I really thought this was one of the best volumes that Jeff Lemire has done inside of the Black Hammer universe. It does not connect to the main overall story, but instead just offers a really interesting look at the Black Hammer universe. So that's my reading order of volumes 1 through 13. I hope that helps a little bit, and I've included it in the description down below. John, where's Black Hammer now? Thank you, John. Yes, Black Hammer is still being published monthly and is on your shelves in that Dark Horse Comics section. New story arcs and new individual character issues are being dropped, but they're not necessarily connecting to the original farm storyline, so you don't have to worry about as much following along. I'm looking forward to a Madame Dragonfly story coming in the future. There's a lot of really interesting things where this universe could go to expand, and I know Jeff Lemire has no intention of stopping. Speculation-wise, this is also a series with some motivation to pick up as well, because I do know Jeff Lemire has said there's been television and movie rights out there in the world. He's even worked on writing some TV show scripts, so it's totally possible we'll get some Black Hammer stories here in the future on the screen. I hope you take a little time and give this a try if you've never heard of it before. As always, leave me your comments down below. Have you tried Black Hammer? Are you interested in Black Hammer? Do you have any favorite characters or story arcs from Black Hammer? I would love to hear from you. Thank you for spending the time. This is Tag Team Thursday. There are links down below, and I'll see you soon for another Comic Community News. Stay classy, Comic Community.